Why did you put the pistol in his hand to make it look like he had killed himself?
The pistol was in his hand to begin with, sir. But I caused his death. I twisted his arm and pushed the pistol against his head. I did that.
Now, this commutation hearing, it's not like any we've seen. There are twists and turns, and there is a shocking surprise that will be introduced at the end. You'll just have to wait for it. Now, with that, let's jump in.
So, Mr. Hilburn, you are Jeffery Hilburn. You're classified as a first felony offender. Your DOC number is 319221. On December 9th, 1992, you were sentenced to life for a second-degree murder conviction. You are requesting a commutation of your sentence. Is that information correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Marabella.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hilburn. How are you? My name is Tony Marabella.
Fine. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Mr. Hilburn, you're 53 years old now, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You've been in prison for 29, 30 years? How long have you been in prison?
Right at 29, sir.
Okay. And how old were you when you came to prison?
24 and a half.
Tell me a little bit about the programs that you've done or you've taken while you've been in prison.
When I first got here, I was fortunate enough to get involved in some Bible programs. Later, I got involved with the lifers because they were doing some positive things. Following that, I became involved with Toastmasters with their speaking classes and all, because I had a big interest in literature and things like that. And I was asked to be part of the human relations program. So I joined that, and try not to spread myself thin, so I try to commit myself to one thing at a time. I found human relations program to be what I really enjoyed because they take care of the elderly, the indigent, and the cemetery. Along the way, I've been involved in literacy programs. I've been involved in educational programs in general throughout the prison most of my time here. I've been very fortunate. I've taken anger management, substance abuse programs, 100 hours pre-release, and I try.
What do you think? What do you think is the most important program you've taken, or what you have learned the most from any particular program?
On a personal and emotional level, the thing I probably have enjoyed and feel like I've benefited from the most here is the Point Lookout program.
Tell me about that.
It's a burial project where inmates bury other inmates, especially when family members can't come get them because of the cost of burials. And it's a very personal project to me. I've been involved with it for approximately 20 years.
What kind of work have you been doing while you've been in prison?
After I was taken out of the field, I became involved in literacy. I went from literacy programs to the library, and then from the library to the Angelite, the prison's magazine.
Okay. And that's currently you're working with right now?
Yes, sir. I've been there for about 18 years.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about your write-ups.
One of my first write-ups was I brought an onion in from the field, a wild onion, and I got a write-up for that. I got a write-up for a few ibuprofen pills when they used to give them to us in the pill call window. I wasn't aware enough of the rules, which was my fault, to know that I couldn't hold them for a little while till after I ate breakfast. I got a write-up for walking out of line, passing some people on the walk. I got a write-up for a fight in the dorm because, in the best terms I can say, somebody was behaving inappropriately, and I didn't react kindly to that.
My records reflect you've had 6 write-ups since you've been in prison. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Your last one was in 2001?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about your alcohol and drug history before you came to prison.
I didn't really have any, sir. I've only been intoxicated 3 times in my entire life. I've taken medication for some pain issues with my back, and that's probably the the closest association I've had with drugs in my life.
Mr. Hilburn, it sounds like you've done pretty well while you've been in prison. You've got some letters of support, one of which is from Brother Kovach, who is with the St. Paul School in Covington, wrote about some of the programs that you do with him. What's your work with him?
I interacted with him on tours, and he expressed an interest to communicate with me, and I'm kind of hesitant to do that. But he seemed to want to discuss what prison was like, and that's kind of acceptable to me, to talk about what prison is like. And he was trying to learn more about it for his students, and he's actually given me some good advice and guidance over the time that I've known him. I've been beneficial to know him, in my opinion.
Mr. Hilburn, while you've got some good support, you've also got opposition. You certainly have law enforcement opposition, and you have family of the victim opposition. I've got some concerns. It looks like your record is very good. I'm going to be very frank with you, and I'm going to want you to talk to me a little bit. I have some very, very difficult understanding of your concept of what happened on that particular night. Because I have, in reviewing your file, reviewing your application, reviewing your police report, I have 3 or 4 different versions of what happened. I'm going to ask you today, as you sit there, tell me what happened on this particular night.
When I met him, I was supposed to be fixing a truck for Karen Spalding. When I met him, we traveled to a point to discuss some things that he said he wanted to talk about. And during the course of the discussion, a weapon was pulled out, and I lost my temper. I did everything wrong that I could have possibly done wrong, sir. I reacted wrong afterwards. Everything that happened that night, because I've thought a lot about this and my mistakes, what I did was completely my fault.
Well, what I'm hearing, Mr. Hilburn, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing a story of 2 guys that maybe got in some kind of an argument. Somebody pulls a gun, there's a struggle, and he got shot. Is that what you're telling me happened?
Yes, sir. And it
Well,
was,
tell me then, why is it you had typed up a suicide note for this man? You deny that?
I didn't type the note, sir.
Well, you said you did in police reports.
Initially, I did because I thought the girl was involved. I thought that it was an issue, but my biggest
You also told the police that he wanted you to kill him. He wanted to commit suicide. He didn't have the courage to do it, and he asked you to shoot him. That's a different statement you gave. So is that a lie also?
Yes, because I thought I was protecting her.
And then once he was shot, he was suffering. And your statement again to the authorities is you killed him out of mercy.
Killed him out of anger, sir. Like I said, I made every wrong decision I could make. I
So,
can't do any of it.
so you're now saying you had nothing to do with typing up the suicide note, even though you told the police and you told them when and how you did it?
I didn't type the letter, so I can take the blame for every single thing else. I truly can. I did not type the letter. Every single thing else that happened that night and afterwards is my fault. I did not type the letter.
Although you told them you did.
Because I thought I was protecting Karen. I can take blame for every single thing else, sir.
Well, what are you taking blame for?
For
Did
his-
you shoot him because of mercy? Was it an accident, or did you
It was
murder him?
It was anger, sir. I caused his death. There's nothing I can do that's going to change that. There's nothing I can ever say that's going to change that. The only thing.
Why did you put the pistol in his hand to make it look like he had killed himself?
The pistol was in his hand to begin with, sir. But I caused his death. I twisted his arm and pushed the pistol against his head. I did that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hilburn. That's all the questions I have, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Marabella. Mr. Wise?
I would like to hear from the warden there, Mr. Benoit. Mr. Benoit, you have anything you like to say on Mr. Hilburn?
Well, as Mr. Marabella went through his record, he's been a model prisoner for us. He's the editor of the Angolite. Well, you know, that's a well-trusted position. We let him move around the forum and do his newspaper, his magazine. He's only 6 write-ups. He's been no problem to us at all. I think he's been a trustee for about 17 years now.
Okay, thank you very much. You know, as I look on your some of the programs you've taken, Mr. Hilburn, you've taken a lot of programs here. You excellent service of on Lookout Point project that you had talked about, and the Toastmasters. You've been in the program since 1996. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
In the Toastmasters?
Well, I was for a while. When I got involved with human relations, I left Toastmasters because I try not to commit to too many things at a time. I see that a lot here, and people aren't able to react well when they belong to too many things. And especially with some of the jobs I've had, the jobs eat up a lot of time. So.
Yes, sir. Mr. Hilburn, you also you have carpentry, electrician, mechanic skills. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I come to prison with those skills.
Yes, sir. What would you say to the victims at this time if you were speaking to the victim?
That I'm sorry for the pain and the loss that I've caused them. There's nothing I'm going to be able to do to undo that for them. I can only tell them I'm sorry for what's happened and for how I reacted. What I did that night changed their lives. I'm sorry.
How long have you been incarcerated totally?
29 years, sir.
29 years. And you've been a trustee out of those 29 years. How long?
17.
17 years. I don't have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Jones?
I have no questions.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Roche?
Mr. Hilburn, your interview this afternoon was very refreshing. I commend you on your honesty today. I think you've told us exactly what happened, and you should be commended for being as honest as anyone else I've heard today, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. Mr. Hilburn, often we hear folks say what they think we want to hear. And I do agree with Mr. Roche. I think you've been forthcoming today. When you rattled off the programs and you were telling us what programs you were taking, did you mention anger management?
Can't remember, but I have taken it.
Okay. I mean, I didn't hear you say it, and I was trying to go through your record real quickly. because you say you reacted in a moment of anger, and I wanted to be sure that you had taken advantage of that program.
Yes, ma'am. I actually signed up for it when they first started it. It just took a while to get in it because they were processing some shorter term people. But
Right.
I took it.
And how long have you been editor of the Anglite?
About 2 years now, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I don't have any other questions. I'm very familiar with your work at the Anglite, and want to commend you on that work. Let's see who we can hear from. Miss Lucas, we'd like to hear from you.
Good afternoon. I am so honored to be here with all of you and to have the chance to speak about my dear friend, Jeffery Dale Hilburn. Dale, as we call him, has really become a member of my family. My mother and I have known him for 17 years. My father was incarcerated in the state of Texas, and I wrote to the editors of the Anglite back in 2003 asking if anybody there would be willing to write to me about what their experiences with their families had been. I'm a theater professor and a playwright, and I wanted to write a play back when I was in graduate school about what it's like to have family in prison. And Dale started writing to me in response to me reaching out to him. He wrote some of the most thoughtful, articulate, poignant, reflective letters I have ever received in my life, and we've continued to be correspondents and good friends for the last 17 years. I am the former director of the Prison Creative Arts Project, which is a program that supports arts programming in all 27 adult correctional facilities in the state of Michigan. We have a robust reentry program, which now is all online because of the pandemic, and to which we would welcome Dale's participation. He is welcome to take all of my college courses without any fees. He is welcome to do all of the reentry programming that we do and to find a community of support with other people who have become professionals after coming home from prison. I have known and studied in my research on people in prison in 10 different countries in the world. I've probably personally come in contact with several thousand people in prison and done interviews with them. Of all the people I have ever known who serve time, there is no one better qualified to come home, be safe, and make significant contributions to the world in many different positive ways than Jeffery Dale Hilburn. You would do his family, his community there in Louisiana, and the wider world that would benefit from his journalistic acumen an immense service in sending this man home. I feel so safe and trusted with him that I would actually welcome him to stay at my house for the rest of his life, if that's what he wants to do. And my 72-year-old mother would also welcome him to stay with her at her home in El Paso, Texas. We consider him to be an incredibly valuable human being. He has contributed much to the community at Angola, and he has a great deal to give to the rest of the world. Please send him home. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to share that with us. We appreciate it. Miss Graves, we'd like to hear from you.
Yes, ma'am. How are y'all today?
Good.
I have got a little emotional on some of that. Excuse me. I have several people here with me. I have 5 brothers. I'm the youngest. Dale is my best friend. He's the next to the youngest. Okay, I think I'm better now. I actually have 2 of my brothers here, Tom and James. I have my Aunt Margie, who has been in our lives, of course, ever since we were kids, but we actually traveled to New Orleans to be with them several times when we were younger. And I also have 2 ladies from our community that we grew up around, Miss Gerlene White and Sissy Hare. My husband John is behind my brother Tom over here. And if Dale gets released, he would be living with either my husband and I, who have plenty of room here we have a double wide with 4 bedroom, it's a 3-bedroom with an office. Have plenty of room here for him and capabilities. My husband's disabled. He could take Dale anywhere he needed to be to get a job and transportation until we could get him a vehicle with transportation. My brother Tom also has a place on his property that is a FEMA trailer pretty much that he could put him in. I did want to address something that I heard Mr. Mirabella state about the suicide note. The reason that I feel that the reason in my heart I know Dale did not write that suicide note was because there were two Tiffanys involved in the incident that occurred. One was the sister of the victim. Her name is Tiffany Jones. My brother also has a daughter named Tiffany. The difference is they spell their name different. Dale did not even know any other difference on how to spell the name Tiffany because he spelled his daughter's name with two F's. And in the suicide note, from what I remember from the hearing, whenever he was convicted, there was only one F in the name Tiffany, which is how the other Tiffany spells her name, which tells me that my brother did not write that note. People have said that Dale and I are the closest that we think alike. And I firmly believe that at times. And sometimes it's a little scary because we pick at each other so much. But I wanted to go into the fact that in my mind, I don't feel he wrote that note because of that factor. My husband, we've been married since 1999. Of course, Dale's been incarcerated since before that. When we got married, he knew how close I was to my brother and how close my family is. So he's been very supportive of making sure that we knew that Dale had a place to go, that he would be there for me and my family to help bring my brother home, which is why he agreed a long time ago to help us to know that Dale could come here and stay and that he would help him get to where he needed to be. I believe in the heat of the moment, a young man took another man's life. I have been over the years, I was in contact with Mark's mother. That was the victim. I was in contact with his mother. We became close friends. We talked many, many times. And at one point, she came to me and asked me, after much prayer between me and her church, if it would be okay if she could write to Dale, because she wanted more information on why it happened, how it happened, what was in Dale's mind for all of this to occur. She told me she had a hard time on forgiving Dale. When she came to me and spoke to me about that, she told me that she would like to correspond with him, and if I thought he would accept that correspondence. After that, I do believe she and Dale corresponded a few times. I want to say at least 3 that I know of, but in that course of time, she learned a little bit more about Dale and what happened and why all of that occurred, to the point that she came to me and told me that she had forgiven Dale. Of course, that's hearsay to y'all now, but she is deceased now, and her daughter still comes to me at the pharmacy I work at. Tiffany still comes to me and talks to me and will tell people that I'm her favorite pharmacist, even though I'm not a pharmacist. Dale gave up custody of his daughter, Tiffany, because he was in jail. She now has 3 kids, which means he now has 3 grandchildren. And I'm hoping, she's connected back with me and my family. I'm hoping that if he gets out and when he gets out, that he'll get to reconnect with her and be able to see his grandchildren. The community, there's so many outpouring of our extended family, our cousins, our second cousins that have already come to me and told me that if Dale gets released, then he will have opportunities for jobs, that they've got places already lined up, that they know he's been incarcerated, for 29 years. They know he's been there. They knew him whenever he was younger, and they're ready to put him into a job and into a society where they know that he will flourish and that he will be helpful. I had Facebook something the couple of days ago, letting people know that his hearing was coming up. So there's several people YouTubing right now watching the hearing. One of my cousins posted that she remembered an incident when Dale was younger, when he was driving, that her mother came to her and told her that it was raining real bad at her home, at her home, and she was scared of bad weather. She says, I remember Mama calling me and telling me that Dale just showed up at her house and knew it was bad weather, showed up at her house and came and brought her to our house so that she wouldn't be alone through that bad weather. That's the type of person Dale is. He likes to help people, which is why he got into the literacy program. And in the literacy program, he helped people learn how to read and write and how to research their cases. In the woodcrafting, he was helping people there, not only to perform his crafts, but to help teach them how to do that so that they could earn a little bit extra money too in the woodcrafting and selling of, the items at the Angola shop, which was beautiful work.
Ms. Graves, we need you to wrap it up for us.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to thank y'all for the consideration of commuting his sentence so we can get him home. We definitely have a room for him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And thanks to all your family for being there today. Mr. Meyer, I will turn it over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, members of the board. As you can see, Jeffery Dale Hilburn has a community of friends and family who care for him, who love him, and who want him home. They are before you, as is Mr. Hilburn, asking for mercy. Jeffery Hilburn has lived his life since he has been incarcerated for nearly 30 years as an example to others and an example to you as to why he is worthy of your mercy. He has 6 total disciplinary infractions during his time at Angola, and I will note that 4 of those 6 were committed during the first 15 months at Angola. He has 2 infractions from 2001, and he has had 0 disciplinary infractions for the past 19 years. For 17 of those years, he has been a trustee. This crime, it is a horrible crime, but it is an absolute outlier in Mr. Hilburn's life. If you look at his criminal history, he has no violent crimes before or since this the murder of Mark Jones. He has used his time in jail as productively as anyone can. He has committed himself to the well-being and support of other members of the Angola community, including, but not limited to, his work at the Angolite, where he's been the editor-in-chief for a long period of time. In addition to anger management, he's undergone over 100 hours of pre-release training, and under a number of different metrics, he is a very low risk to reoffend. So for that reason, your members of the board, and based on what you have heard so far, we would ask that the board commute Jeffery Dale Hilburn's sentence to 99 years with parole eligibility. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. And Mr. Hilburn, would you like to make a statement?
I would like to reiterate how sorry I am for the pain I've caused the family. I want to thank everybody for what they've said. I want to express my appreciation for giving me this opportunity at Mercy. I really don't know what to say beyond those things, because that's the simplest way I can express what I feel.
Okay, well said. And I just want to, once again, for the record, Mr. Marabella mentioned it, but I want to just for the record to note the opposition by the sentencing judge in the 5th Judicial District. Very, very strong letter of opposition from the district attorney in the 5th JDC. The sheriff in Richland Parish has expressed opposition, as has the chief of police in Rayville. And we do have opposition expressed by the victim's family. You need to just be aware of that. Mr. Marabella, are you ready to offer your vote?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I am. Mr. Hilburn, you have, as Madam Chairman has pointed out, you have significant opposition to your release, to your being granted any sort of relief here. And I think that that opposition obviously comes from the crime itself. Those are some very significant concerns that I have. I'm sure you gleaned that from the questions that I asked you about what happened and how it happened. I do agree with my colleague, Mr. Roche. You have been very honest with us. I think that you have accepted responsibility, regardless of how this occurred. You've accepted the responsibility for it. You admitted that you are the responsible person for causing this man's death. The things that you have accomplished while you have been in prison are outstanding. No one can argue with that. You've accomplished a lot of things. You've been a trustee for 17 years. You've completed many programs. You have a lot of good support on your behalf. Based upon all of those things, it would be my vote to commute your sentence to 99 years and make you parole eligible, however, after serving 35 years. So that would be my vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mirabella. Mr. Wise? You're on mute, sir.
My vote was going to be a little different. I commute your sentence to 99, make you parole eligible after serving a total of 30 years.
Okay.
But,
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jones?
Yes, my vote would be the same as Mr. Marabella. Commute 99 to and release at I think what's it 35?
35.
35.
Mr. Roche?
Madam Chairman, again, I'd like to commend Mr. Hilburn for his honesty today. And my vote is the same as Mr. Marabella's, to commute to 99 years with parole eligibility after 35 years.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Hilburn, I do concur with the commutation. My vote today would be to commute your sentence to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility. Based on what's Warden Van Noy has said, you're a model prisoner. You have a low risk assessment score. You've been very honest with us today and you've accepted responsibility. But as you know, the majority, so we will make the recommendation for commutation on your behalf, but the majority has voted that be after serving 35 years, you'd be parole eligible. So that is the specific recommendation that we'll make to Governor Edwards on your behalf. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Good luck to you, sir. Thanks, everybody, for your participation today. Thank you, Mr. Meyer.
Now, remember how I said that there's going to be a twist at the end? Well, we're about to see it. You see, we are fast forwarding now to the present day, February of 2025. It's been 5 years since that commutation hearing. The governor did sign it, and now here he is up for parole. Now, typically, this would be a shoo-in because the board is handpicked by the governor. If they recommend to the governor to pardon, then when the parole hearing comes in, it's basically rubber stamped. It's basically gonna happen. But this is no shoo-in. This is a new governor. This is a new parole board, except for Miss Renazza. But so there's no loyalty to the earlier decision. But still, that's not the twist that I'm here to talk about. The twist is I wonder if the prior parole board was tricked. Did you notice that there was no victim impact statement at the prior hearing? Well, this time there is, and there is a powerful victim impact statement, and they have something to tell the board. They do. You know, did you wonder if he was actually being honest, as Mr. Roche stated? I mean, why would anyone come into the parole hearing and lie? Well, we're about to find out. With that, let's jump in.
Jeffrey Dale Hilburn, 319-221.
Okay. Mr. Hilburn, I'm going to read some information into the record. You're a first felony offender, currently serving a second-degree murder charge, in which your life sentence was commuted down to 99 years with parole eligibility after 35. You have a good time date of 12/17/2039, full term date of 2090. Does that sound correct to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We have some individuals that are in support of you today and wish to speak. And then we also have some opposition. We'll start with your support system in a minute, but first of all, I'd like to ask you, would you tell this panel why you're currently incarcerated and why this panel should consider early release?
Incarcerated because I committed second-degree murder and was convicted of it. I am hopeful that the way I've lived my life here can earn me the mercy of forgiveness. I try every day to do something to help people. It's not that I get up and I try to become involved in other people's business. I just try to help people. The jobs I've been fortunate enough to hold, I've tried to focus on education and helping rehabilitate other people as much as I could. It's similar to some of what I did before I got locked up, but I try to make an effort to help people. I'm not sure if I'm always successful, but I make the effort.
Mr. Hilburn, we're going to allow those in support of you to speak first. We're going to start with your sister, Rachel Hilburn Graves, who's joining us via Zoom. And so, Ms. Graves, Bill?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Rachel Hilburn Graves, sister to Jeffrey Dale Hilburn. I am the youngest of the 6 children born to Carl and Ethel, and Dale is the youngest son. My brothers and I are asking for Dale's release, a dream that our parents and we have had for many years. Dale, as we call him, would be living with my husband, John, and I if he is released. John is disabled and is willing to transport Dale anywhere he needs to be until he acquires his own transportation. We have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, excuse me, and are empty nesters. We also have 2 job opportunities for him, working with a Christian band as a PR for Taverns to Tabernacles, and as a mechanic position with my daughter and her husband's business, Goliath Automotive. This is to help him until he can find another job of his own that might fit his needs, which I also have an opportunity for him in a social media platform that correlates with his speaking and writing skills. Having lost a son in a vehicle accident, which also took the life of another man, I understand some of what my parents felt. In saying that, our parents were devastated in knowing that Dale was involved in Mark's murder. I knew Mark. Mark sat behind me in class. He played with my hair. We went to high school together. We worked together at Walmart. I worked in the pharmacy. He worked in the paper goods department. I had met his mother through my job. We communicated well before that. After that, it was very strained until one day she asked me to come outside and sit with her in some chairs. We talked about Dale and Mark, about our lives. She told me that she wanted to offer him forgiveness, and she started writing him. Our relationship, we were born on the same day, just 10 years apart. So we would communicate about birthdays and things like that. And she expressed to me that she would do anything that she could if Dale was ever offered the opportunity. He does have a letter from her stating that. In saying that, she passed away, and that was a big loss to me because she and I had become very good friends. I also knew her daughter, Tiffany, who would come to the pharmacies that I worked at and would, come visit, say hi, told me I was her Rachel. And until about 9 months ago, before the last hearing, I had called her to ask her if she would speak on Dale's behalf. Before I could get it out of my mouth, and I told her who I was when I called, she says, "I'm sorry, Rachel, I cannot talk to you." And I told her I understood, and I bid her goodbye. I figured at that point, there was some conversations held otherwise. But I had spoken with her for almost 20 years. In letters to Dale and conversations with myself, like I said, Miss Doris had expressed her sympathy for my mother and her desire to help Dale if that occurred. Dale has achieved many accomplishments in Angola and has learned more about who he wants to be, not the boy he was when he entered those gates. Utilizing his strengths, he was a member of the Toastmaster Club, worked in the library, worked with research for inmate cases for those who were less knowledgeable, Crafted in the hobby shop, became a photographer, writer, and now editor of the Angolite magazine. But most importantly, I feel that his most important job is overseeing Point Lookout. If he is released, I'm sorry.
We have a lot of that information in our record if you want to consolidate.
Okay. Dale gave up custody of his daughter so that she would not grow up with the stigma of having her father in prison. He has been set on watching his daughter grow up and her 3 children, his grandchildren, the loss of our parents. And then he was also granted a pardon by Governor Bell Edwards, which we had hoped he would come home. By saying that, we understand, Governor Landry had his own ideas of what he wanted to do, and he wanted to make sure that who was released out under his watch was also in his considerations. Many of our friends are following this channel in hopes that he is released, and we appreciate any of the choices that you make and know it's God's will. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We also have Miss Lucas, a friend. Miss Lucas, if you can keep your comments to about 3 minutes, we have quite a few people to hear from. Thank you.
Thank you kindly. I'm honored for the chance to speak. My name is Dr. Ashley Lucas. I'm a professor at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and I'm speaking to you from there today, though I wish I could be there in person to show the seriousness of my support for Jeffery Dale Hilburn. I've known him for 20 years now. In 2004, I was a graduate student in theater at the University of California in San Diego, and I wrote to the editors of The Angolite saying, would you please write to me about what you understand about people's families being in prison. My father was incarcerated, and I was writing a play and doing research on families of incarcerated people. Carrie Myers, who's also present on this call, was on the Angolite staff at that time, and Dale Hilburn as well. And they both wrote to me, along with a couple of other people, about what had happened to their families. And it was the first time, as somebody with an incarcerated father, that I'd really had the chance to interact with other people who were in prison, who understood what it was like from the other side of the walls. And these men mentored me and, in a sense, helped to raise me as a person who does prison work and takes prison work seriously. Now, 20 years later, I have been the director of the Prison Creative Arts Project, the largest prison arts organization in the world here at the University of Michigan, and I teach classes that send students into prisons to do arts workshops. I say all of that to let you know that I have now interacted with, worked closely with thousands of incarcerated men and women, and I know no one more eligible to be successful on parole than Jeffery Dale Hilburn. He has incredible work experience, excellent public speaking ability. We would be honored to have him come and speak on the University of Michigan campus as part of the activities surrounding our annual exhibition of art by Michigan prisoners. Upon his release, Carrie Myers did this after he was released, and it would be a logical step to have Jeffery Dale come to speak to us as well. And he would visit my classes and help to teach my students what it means to do good work that helps other people in prison. Dale is in a unique position as editor of The Angolite, not just to understand his own journey through prison, but to have done many years of reporting on what happens to other people in prison. So he has not only the personal life experience, but the macro understanding of how other people have navigated this difficult life circumstance and become successful. He is a model for rehabilitation. He is kind, he is generous, he is intelligent, hardworking, and thoughtful. And he has a huge community of support out here, including a lot of people who read The Angolite who may never have had the chance, the honor of meeting him in person as I have. So I urge you to please send him home. If something ever happened to his family, he would be very welcome to live in my house here in Michigan if his parole would be transferred, though I hope nothing ever happens to his blessed family, and I know they are very, very eager to receive him in Louisiana. He will do a lot more good in the free world than he's been able to do inside Angola, and that's stating quite a lot because I believe he's helped a huge number of people through his work at Point Lookout, through the Long-Termers Association, and at the Angolite. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for joining us. We also have Mr. Carrie Myers with the Parole Project who would like to speak. Mr. Myers?
Thank you, Ms. Ledoux, and good morning, members of the panel. Kerry Myers with the Louisiana Parole Project here on behalf of Jeffery Dale Hilburn. This case is, as you probably have already heard, a little personal to me. I brought Jeffrey into the Angolite more than probably 20 plus years ago, and for several reasons. Not only did I know, I believe in his ability to do the work. One of the most important things to me at that point was, would Jeffrey do the right thing in a job that had intense scrutiny and was very high profile? He's proven that to be the correct choice. That faith in him was justified. One of the things also that have impressed me about Jeffrey was his community service with Point Lookout Project, with Human Relations Club, and many other things that he has done to give back. I can tell you the Parole Project stands here ready and able to assist Jeffrey after 30 years of incarceration. Our program is designed exactly for people like Jeffrey. We are also prepared to offer Jeffrey long-term support if this board would determine that going back to the area where the offense was committed is unsuitable. So we're here to give him our complete support, and we ask this board to consider his outstanding record, his remorse, and the fact that, as you mentioned earlier, Ms. Ledoux, evidence-based Jeffrey presents no threat to public safety. So we'd ask this board to grant us parole today.
Thank you. We do have some individuals who are would like to speak in opposition to his release. We do have the victim's fiance, Karen Spalding, and victim friend, Susan Keenan. Ms. Spalding, if you would like to go first. Spalding, join us. Is she on the phone or? Is Susan Keenan available to us at this point? Can you unmute either Miss Susan or Karen, either unmute and begin your dialogue? Okay. I need someone to unmute so that you can. Okay, thank you very much. Identify yourself, please, and begin your dialogue.
Yeah, sorry. I had to switch over to my computer since my phone would not allow me to unmute.
I need someone to unmute so that you can.
Ma'am, you're gonna have to close out the YouTube channel. Stop watching it on YouTube.
Begin your dialogue.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah, thank you for.
Right. Please identify yourself.
My name is Karen Spalding. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I urge the board to consider the gravity of Mr. Hilburn's crimes. Many, including members of Mr. Hilburn's own family, were unaware of the full extent of his criminal behavior, both documented and undisclosed. Unfortunately, we were not given the chance to oppose his pardon due to lack of awareness. My family, Mark's family, and I have suffered immensely due to Mr. Hilburn's actions. The murder was the most heinous. However, there were numerous other crimes, additional charges, which included forgery, stalking, and multiple thefts to include firearms, were not pursued by the district attorney's office under the belief that Mr. Hilburn would serve life without parole. It was also revealed to us that before his latest crimes, Mr. Hilburn was already classified as a career criminal by the authorities and had almost taken another life in another incident out of state. His history indicates a pattern of utter disregard and lack of empathy for others and his victims. Mr. Hilburn has devastated our families. I believe Mark's parents passed away due to the stress and loss inflicted by his actions, leaving Mark's sister not only without her brother, but without her parents. My life was systematically destroyed. Not only did I lose Mark, but I was also forced to file bankruptcy due to Mr. Hilburn's fraudulent activities, such as forging my name to my credit cards. After reaching the lowest point, I had to rebuild my life from scratch, eventually dedicating myself to a career in federal law enforcement, focusing on counterterrorism, while still to this day mourning Mark's loss. Through my years in law enforcement, I gained incredible insight on criminal behavior, and Mr. Hilburn exhibited a consistent pattern of deceit, frequently changed his story, shifted blames to others, and even threatened my family after his arrest. While incarcerated before the trial, he also went as far as to send someone he had been in jail with to my home. During the trial, he showed no remorse for taking an innocent life. His actions, instead, he manipulated others, including his own family, to serve his own interests. His actions included stalking us and crafting a suicide note.
Can you, I hate to ask you, can you wrap up?
You are trash, Lindsay. You are trash.
We have so much information and we appreciate your comments, but.
Thank you. I'm not surprised to hear that he's a model prisoner, but I don't feel, from what I know, that this expression of remorse is sincere. And I firmly believe that Mr. Hilburn remains a significant threat to society, and I fear his release would endanger us, and therefore I am pleading with the board to please deny his parole. And I thank you once again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Did we have Miss Susan Keenan? Was she able to join us? Oh, that was her? Okay.
She's trying to get on here.
Oh, okay. You're trying to get on? Yes, I see you now. You can unmute.
She's still muted.
Still muted. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, alrighty. My name is Susan Keenan. I am Karen's aunt. To begin, I want to thank y'all for allowing me to be on the board today and speak to y'all opposing Mr. Hilburn's release. This is very new to us. We weren't brought into this till this year. Of course, we weren't expecting a pardon or parole or anything with him having 99 years in one day. I have a little insight, which y'all have my impact statement. And, I worked with Mr. Hilburn for a brief time as a second part-time job to help a friend out. And I live with my niece briefly with my 3-year-old child to help with her bills and, of course, my bills at the time. So I have a lot that is in my impact statement that you can review and see and stuff like that. So I'm no stranger to this situation. I feel like Mr. Hilburn is in a controlled environment at Angola prison. I feel like that if he's released, he would not, be in a controlled environment and revert back to manipulating and revenge on our family. Mr. Hilburn, with the 99 years, of course, and the rap sheet that he has and stuff like that, I feel like he hasn't done enough time. I just don't feel safe I'm, close in the area of his family and of course my family, and, separated into 3 parishes and stuff like that. I just don't feel like this is a good time for him to be taken out. I feel like he's doing good for y'all at Angola, but I just don't feel like we are ready. And I don't know if the public would be ready. I just want to oppose the pardon at this time. I know y'all want to keep this brief and short, and I thank you again for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate that. Warden, I'd like to hear from you if you don't mind. You've known Mr. Hilburn, I'm sure, for a while now.
Yes, ma'am. I've known him a very long time. He's been, like I say, he's been a model prisoner, no problems at all. His last write-up was 24 years ago for a simple flight. He's been no problem here for us. He's at the angle light. We use him for all kinds of different stories and things that we won't produce.
Thank you for.
He's been no problem.
Mr. Tillis.
Good morning. Mr. Hilburn, how are you?
All right, sir, how are you?
Good. I see that you've done well since you've been incarcerated. During the crime, were you on drugs or using drugs?
No, sir. The only drugs I've taken in my life really are prescription medications.
Okay. I went through the the report, but just tell me again, what really happened?
I met Mark Jones because he had asked to meet me. I was supposed to repair a truck for Karen Spalding. When we met, we had a discussion and he told me several things that he felt that I was in crossing borders between him and Karen. Karen and I had been dating before Mark and Karen were dating, and he felt like that I was in, for lack of a better term, his territory. When the weapon was produced, and based on several things that were said, although I didn't bring a weapon with me, I lost my temper. Mark Jones is dead because I lost my temper. He's not dead because I set out to harm him. He's dead because I lost my temper. His death is my fault. I can't phrase it any other way where it makes it look like somebody else. It's my fault because I lost my temper.
What happened to the written suicide note?
From my understanding of the evidence and all, it was found with him. I did not write that letter. I took credit for it at first because I thought I was protecting Karen Spalding. I never read the letter. I didn't get to read it until after I was arrested. I don't know how the letter got in his hands, but I know that I did not write it.
Why did you lock the car when you left?
I don't remember locking the car. I mean, if I did, it was unintentional. I don't remember locking the car.
Okay, I have questions.
Ms. Renatza.
All right, Jeffrey, yeah, I have some questions. I know I've read, I supported you in your pardon hearing. I've worked with you over the years, and so I know you, and I know you well. I do notice that the first thing that struck me, and we got some written information from Karen, Ms. Spalding, and Ms. Keenan in the record, much of which they repeated today. But what I noticed was only yesterday did we get your acceptance to the parole project. Why was that so late?
My initial intent was to go home because I have jobs and a housing set up and everything there. But it was suggested that the parole project would be a better fit for me at this time. But basically because I viewed the parole project based on conversations with Mr. Hunley and Mr. Myers as a place for guys who've been locked up and had no family or finances. And I felt I had that. But it was emphasized to me that it would be a good fit for me because I have been locked up for almost 34 years now. And regardless of my experience prior to incarceration, I have been at Angola for 34 years, and there's a lot of things that I don't know about society, and they could help me pick that up.
I agree. And I'm glad to hear you say those things. Because I agree. You've been 34 years, you've had a good drop, so to speak, in prison, but there is a lot to learn, and I think that they do good work. So I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Hilburn, I'd like to explore something that's in the record that caused me a lot of concern. And it was alluded to today by your sister that there's been some communication prior to the victim's mother passing of communication between you and she.
Yes, ma'am. She acquired my address from my sister when they met at Walmart, and she contacted me initially. The law prohibits us from contacting them. And when I replied, I made sure I asked. But the initial contact came from her because she wanted to express her forgiveness for me. And her initial letter expressed that she experienced that feeling that she should forgive me through her church activities. And through the several letters we exchanged, she always emphasized that to me, ma'am.
But is it prohibited for you to respond to her letters?
No, ma'am, because at the time an assistant warden contacted me after the second letter and discussed it with me. And when she understood that Miss Jones, because she actually spoke to her, to my knowledge, when she understood that she contacted me, she said, since she initiated contact and she wants to communicate with you, then they would allow it.
That concerned me. Mr. Hilburn, the record states that you wrote the suicide note. And so that what you're stating today is in direct conflict with that information contained in our file.
Yes, ma'am. When I was arrested and they told me about the letter, once again, I thought I was protecting somebody. What I was doing was making my situation worse and compounding my own problems. I said during my clemency hearing, as I said today, I did not write the letter. I don't know how he got the letter, but I assumed blame for things that I thought would protect somebody else.
How old were you when this murder took place?
24, ma'am.
How old are you today?
58.
I would, Mr. Tillis, are you prepared today?
Yes, ma'am. I'm really pleased to see that you're making changes while you're there, but because of strong opposition from law enforcement, my vote today is going to be to deny.
Ms. Renata?
All right, Jeffrey, as Mr. Tillis stated, there is strong law enforcement opposition, very strong opposition from the DA's office. And we've heard from Ms. Spalding and Ms. Keenan today. I supported you at your pardon hearing. That was in 2020. And you had a good record then. You acknowledged your work at Point Lookout. And I support you today. My vote would be to grant you to the parole project transition plan, at least for the full year, and ask that you have as part of that transition training, there would be some in-depth focus on financial literacy and personal cash management, and that you be restricted rather from travel to Ouachita and Richmond Parish. That's my vote.
Mr. Hilburn, I'm kind of still concerned over this letter issue. I'm looking at deception. Okay, that's what I'm looking at. Was there a spirit of deception also involved with your anger and then the letter writing and things like that just give me such pause. I'm looking at it and right now I'm not comfortable with supporting your request for parole. So my vote is to deny. We wish you well. You're a young man, relatively speaking. So, thank you. That concludes our business with Mr. Hilburn.
Wow. Okay, so let's unpack this. If there's any hearing that needs unpacking, it's this one. And we do have the appeal and we'll go over it. But before we do, I want to get some stuff off my chest and also share with you my experience watching these hearings. So, Sir Richard has the spreadsheet. He says, Mandy, we have a hearing that's coming up today in 2025. Make sure you cover the one that happened in 2025 years ago. And already I'm just super intrigued. I love going back to 2020. I like the Mr. O'Shea. And who are we going to have in there, right? There was no Miss Bonnie Jackson. I wish she was. But anyways, you go through the hearing and I just love Mr. O'Shea so much. As soon as Mr. O'Shea says, I believe you, I just kind of believed him too. There's no ADA. There's no victim. So there's nothing. So it's like, well, maybe he did come in there. Maybe he came in there and just like, it is a hard story to understand, but with the typed letter, but then the supporters come in and say, well, he spelled the name differently than he would have. And Mr. O'Shea sold me. When I first walked, but Mr. O'Shea, he sold me. Okay, maybe Mr. O'Shea actually said you were being honest. Most people come in here and tell us what we want them to hear, and you're risking it all by not telling us that. And then you fast forward to the pardon hearing, the commutation hearing, now that the governor signed it over, but the new board's here, and then you hear from the survivor, the victim. And it's what an amazing story. I mean, she goes into law enforcement. But then she lays down the facts. She lays down she drops information that if was given at the prior hearing, he does not get granted. Mr. O'Shea would not have said you were being honest. And this is what's incredible. This is why this hearing, if is anything, is how important it is for the ADA to show up. Because without the victims there, you get these grants. And they need to show up for all these hearings. They need to speak the truth on behalf of the victim. And then you might say, well, how is it possible that the victim wasn't notified? We see it all the time. We see it all the time. And I don't think it can be anything short of incompetence from the board. Maybe they only have, not the board itself, the staff, maybe they only had one staff member. Maybe that staff member is overwhelmed. I don't know what it is. Maybe they're using antiquated or no technology at all, but we've seen it happen a lot, and we've seen huge decisions being made because of that. There was one case that it's what got my channel canceled from Louisiana for like 3 months because they granted someone because no victim showed up, and then victims saw it on the news and went crazy, and then Louisiana all of a sudden found contraband in his cell that night, and they reversed the decision because of that. And wow, okay. Anyways, I should recover that hearing. It was so crazy, but I'm digressing. I'm getting lost. I'm getting distracted. Miss Ledoux, she didn't buy it, and she's, to her credit, said, "I just don't like it. I don't like it's the criminal mind that bothers me. You should come in here and just tell the truth." And I read the appeal. I heard the info. It's just not true. I don't believe him for a second. Then you can mash it up with everything else that he had done, all the other sketchy items. What you have here is someone who has a criminal mind, someone who might even be taking joy in thinking that he's manipulating the board. But we'll go through the information. Let's just go through it. After spending the evening Together, Mark left Karen's house, purportedly to go home. Unfortunately, he never made it to his house. On their way to work and school in the morning of June 13, 1991, Mark's mother and sister discovered Mark's car on the shoulder of Highway 80 at an area known to Crew Lake. They stopped and looked inside the car, only to find Mark dead with a .38 in his right hand. So he's in his car, dead with a .38 in his right hand. Now when you do read through this, you'll see it every way. There's no way this was but when police arrived, they had to pry open the locked doors. The coroner declared Mark dead at the scene. He was found sitting in the driver's seat, slumped over. I can't highlight the letters. For some reason, it's not letting me, so that's why I'm not doing it. The passenger side with 2 gunshot wounds, right? Because people always shoot themselves in the head twice, when they take their own life. To the right side of the head. The chief investigator, Officer Robinson, found a cocked pistol in Mark's hand. At trial, Officer Robinson identified this pistol as the same one that Karen identified as missing from her Mazda. There were 5 bullets found in the gun. 2 were fired, 2 were unfired, and 1 was a misfire. Officer Robinson opined that in his experience, these rounds were reloaded wad cutters. What's a wad cutter? More shells and holster were found on the passenger side floorboard. There was also a neatly folded typed letter. And whenever it's typed, that's like another red flag. They say that usually it's not typed. That's kind of impersonal. The sheriff's office initially treated the matter as an unaliving. Meanwhile, Hilburn called Karen early in the morning of the 13th of June and told Karen that he had called her twice the previous night. Karen did not remember talking to Hilburn nor receiving any phone calls from him that night. Hilburn met Karen after class, where he handed her a book bag which contained a .357 Magnum, a holster, and bullets, and said it was to replace her missing .38. They ate lunch at McDonald's and then went to Walmart so Karen could find Mark. Milburn went into a different department while Karen was looking for Mark. A fellow employee told Karen what had happened to Mark. Karen, extremely upset, found Hilburn and accepted his offer to drive her wherever she wanted to go. After Hilburn drove Karen home, she drove the Toyota to Mark's parents' house, and Hilburn took her Mazda to the airport where she was employed. The police interviewed Karen and showed her the unalive note. Karen suggested that they talk with Hilburn. During the interview, a lady named Mrs. Patterson called to inform the police that both her sons had seen a red motorcycle parked behind Mark's car at Crew Lake at a different time the night of Mark's death. Karen told the police that Hilburn had a red and black motorcycle and where they could find it. Pictures were taken of Hilburn's motorcycle, and the 2 Patterson boys said that the bike they saw looked like the one in the pictures. Hilburn was then brought in from the airport for questioning. Initially, Hilburn was calm and relaxed and denied being anywhere near Crew Lake the previous night. After first denying what he knew, Mark well, or the type of car Mark drove, he admitted he knew Mark's car because he said he'd seen it parked at Karen's house on several occasions. He also told the police that he did reload rat shot and hollow point bullets. Hilburn also admitted to being kind of jealous of Karen and Mark. I mean, there's a lot of drama here that I'm not really following. But again, as we see here, he killed him, then made it seem like an unaliving. And the only thing is, at this hearing, so he admits, remember, he admits to killing him, but not writing the note. And he claims that he wanted him. No, wait. So his story is that he killed him out of anger. Is that he was, they had a confrontation. He pulled the gun, which would have, by the way, made it self-defense. He pulled the gun. There was a struggle for the gun. He shot him, and then when he's dying, he felt bad for him. And no, actually, that was one of his stories. No, he just killed him out of anger. So he's showing up today and saying, it was self-defense, but I killed him out of anger. Or even just, I killed him out of anger. And then what I believe actually happened, and we'll read through this, I'm sure they'll say the same thing, I haven't read it yet, is of course that he ambushed him, killed him, typed a letter, and then set it up like it was an unaliving. And it's just so ridiculous. The whole story's so ridiculous. But he could have just came here today and said, that's what happened, but he still can't do it. Instead, he's protecting the girl because the girl wrote why would she write the letter? That makes no sense. It doesn't make sense. It's so bizarre how I don't get why Mr. O'Shea believed him, because why would the girlfriend write that letter? So let's go through this more. With him, an earlier occasion asked Hilburn to assist him. Hilburn sent him on his way. Mark had handwritten and then, Hilburn went on to say that Mark had handwritten and then typed the letter because he did not want it in his own handwriting. Hilburn then changed the story to say that he went to Sandal Hall at northeast of Louisiana to type the letter. Hilburn told the officers, I wish I could put my mouse over it, but I can't, that he knew basically what Mark wanted in the letter because he had talked to Mark about the contents. At this point, Hilburn said he did not have the letter written by Mark. Once inside the car, Milburn said that he told Mark that he had typed the unaliving letter and gave it to Mark, who then put it in his lap. Hilburn claimed to have tried to talk to Mark about committing unaliving and admitted to Mark that he had considered it himself. But for any of you wondering why I'm saying unaliving, it's because YouTube has a weird thing that they don't like that word, so it's best to avoid it. Next, Hilburn claimed that Mark took the gun out of the glove box and loaded it in the driver's seat. Mark supposedly lost courage and put the gun down. Hilburn then claimed that he thought Mark was going to shoot him, so he reached for the door handle, but Mark assured Hilburn he was safe and asked him if he could do anything for Karen. Hilburn told Mark he would, and then grabbed the gun. Hilburn told officers that Mark then grabbed Hilburn's wrist and guided the gun to Mark's head. According to Hilburn, he tried to pull the gun away from Mark's head, but it went off in the process and wounded Mark. Because Mark was in great pain, crying, screaming, and bleeding, Hilburn squeezed the trigger again. What other true crime stories have we heard about? There was that one that I can't remember her name. She shot her boyfriend like 8 times, and then there's like a long interrogation of it where she's just like nuts. And she asked us in the interrogation, well, he was in pain and his face, he was so pretty and his face got ruined, so I just finished him. And it was like, what? Hilburn then followed Mark's instructions and put the gun in a cocked position in Mark's right hand and locked the doors. After giving his oral statement, Hilburn agreed to give a recorded statement. However, the recorded statement differed in some aspects from the oral statement. For instance, Hilburn was much more elaborate in describing his efforts to convince Mark not to kill himself. Hilburn denied that Mark had written the unaliving letter, which Hilburn was to use as a guide for a typed letter. Hilburn also denied that Mark ever gave him such a letter. Instead, Hilburn claimed that Mark told him certain things he wanted in the letter. He claimed Mark bemoaned the fact that he couldn't make a go of it with women. Hilburn then stated that Mark handed him the gun and that Hilburn pleaded with Mark that he could not do it. Mark then supposedly guided Hilburn's arm up to Mark's head and assured Hilburn it wasn't his fault. Next, Hilburn claimed against the gun went off as he tried to pull it away, that he put the gun back to Mark's head and pulled the trigger, again in response to Mark's cries of pain. Hilburn then claimed to have called Kieran around 11:30, went home and cried and shook as he contemplated turning himself in. At the trial, Kieran testified for the prosecution. Karen noted that Mark had never mentioned unaliving and how parts of the unaliving letter sounded like things that Hilburn would have written rather than Mark. Karen described how some of the statements in the letter coincided with the discussion she and Hilburn had, and that she had never had any of these types of discussions with Mark. Isn't it interesting how the supporters, butterflies and roses, they're like, hey, he's so amazing. What was it? The drawings he does or something? It's like, it's amazing. And you see, he typed the name differently and he would never have done that. And it's like, actually, like that, I know he's not, doesn't seem like a sharp pistol in the shed, but that is a manipulation if you're a criminal, which apparently he was from what we've heard, all the different criminal things that he did. That is something he would think about doing. And it's crazy how I believe he completely conned his supporters. And for every con man, there are always people that are ready to get conned. That's just the way it works. The state also called Sherry Hudo, assistant manager at Walmart, who who worked with Mark. She testified that Mark was a good employee and in no danger of losing the job, and that they discussed his plans to move out to the West Management training, blah, 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 blah. And I think that we get the picture. This is a great appeal, though. There's a lot of information in it. Thank you, Sir Rochelle. I'll put it in the description. And to me, again, why I thought this hearing was so fascinating, and I was struggling with how to show it to you guys, right? Sometimes I go with the present day hearing, and then I give a clip right at the intro, and then I say, now, whoa, 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 let's take a flashback to the past. And I didn't do it this time because I wanted you to go through the experience that I went through. And let me know in the comment section what you prefer I do. There's a bit of a twist on whether or not, because I feel like almost for some of you watching it, you feel that it's an old hearing, it's not relevant to today. So sometimes I feel like it's important to have, but I don't know, let me know in the comment section. But I chose this way because I wanted you to go through the surprise, because I found this to be shocking. I think he fooled everyone in the first hearing. Then you have the victims come up. They provided information that the DA was too lazy to even show up or even care to provide, laying down this guy as a professional con man, basically, and a liar and a murderer and a thief and a stalk and all these scary things. And the governor signed off. The board could, and he was about to walk out. And, you know, just imagine, even just the few words that were used, they were going to recommend for immediate parole eligibility. He would have been paroled probably. But it wasn't. And this is the way it is. And he might die in prison. I don't know. Or he'll just have to reapply for parole and try to be honest this time. But there you have it. And with that, I'll let you go.
I urge the board to consider the gravity of Mr. Hilburn's crimes. Many, including members of Mr. Hilburn's own family, were unaware of the full extent of his criminal behavior, both documented and undisclosed. Unfortunately, we were not given the chance to oppose his pardon due to lack of awareness. My family, Mark's family, and I have suffered immensely due to Mr. Hilburn's actions. The murder was the most heinous. However, there were numerous other crimes, additional charges, which included forgery, stalking, and multiple thefts to include firearms, were not pursued by the district attorney's office under the belief that Mr. Hilburn would serve life without parole. It was also revealed to us that before his latest crimes, Mr. Hilburn was already classified as a career criminal by the authorities and had almost taken another life in another incident out of state.